I don't even know what to say for this intro. It's a good time to be a gamer. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up. Hello guys, how are you? My name is David Franco. I am a full-time content creator. I promise I'm better than that. I literally just don't know what to say for the intro. I have a lot to say for this video, but yeah, for the actual intro, that's the best you're gonna get today. Guys, what is new? How are you today? My fellow gamers, I have been a gamer since I was a little sperm. Seriously, I was playing games inside of my mom. I was like, hey mom, I can't pause the game. What a weird... Hello guys, how are you today? My name is David Franco, and I am a full-time content creator who just happens to love video games. I've been a gamer since I was just a little kid. I will never forget playing the Atari, and the NES, and my first Super Nintendo, and the Genesis, and the 32X, and the Sega CD, the N64, PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, the first Xbox, which was a huge deal back then, Xbox 360, Xbox One. There are very few game consoles I've never owned. One of them is the Virtual Boy. I know the Virtual Boy is touted as like a terrible, terrible portable experience, but I still want one. And I'm gonna buy one on eBay, hopefully in the near future, because I would seriously be honored to have it on display either down here in my office or upstairs in my gaming room. And well, that's the room I use for Twitch, twitch.tv/DavidFranco. I say that because I will be buying both consoles and streaming both consoles a lot. So please, follow me, guys. I appreciate it. Okay, so today's video, I'm just going to give my thoughts on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Please, by no means am I creating this video to start a console war. Console wars are stupid. They're childish. Yeah, it's fun to base your opinion around companies that you love. But at the end of the day, Sony and Microsoft are both out to get your money. Don't forget that. They don't really love us. They don't know us. They're a business. They're here to make money. And honestly, I'm very excited about both visions from each company. I mean, like, Sony has a great vision. Microsoft has a great vision. And I'm going to detail my thoughts on both right now. So let's get started. Okay, so starting with the Xbox Series X, I do have little notes under the video here. So if you see me glancing down, that's why. I don't have all this stuff memorized. But based on the Xbox X, I almost called it Xbox X, Xbox Series X presentation, I gotta say, I wasn't really wowed. I mean, I'm impressed by the console itself. I'm excited about the potential games in the future. I'm a little worried about one major point, which I'll talk about shortly. But overall, the presentation didn't really wow me like Sony's PS5 presentation did. I don't know. I think Sony had a lot more to show in terms of games. But I think Xbox might have a better vision in terms of being consumer friendly. So, all right, let's talk about it right now. Okay, so first of all, Microsoft is promising 4K gaming at 60 frames per second. As a PC gamer, this excites me. I mean, yeah, I steadily get at least 100, 120 frames every night when I PC game like Modern Warfare, Apex, and all that good stuff. But I don't game in 4K. I typically game at 1440p, which, if you ask me, is a beautiful resolution. It's higher than 1080p, and you're still getting a great quality experience because you're easily surpassing 120 frames per second. Okay, so to go from 120 frames per second down to 60, it's not a huge deal. I mean, yeah, there is a vast difference in what the human eye can see, and believe me, there is a big difference. I mean, if you haven't gamed over 60 frames per second, you are seriously missing out. I mean, it is so buttery smooth. But even then, 4K gaming, 60 frames per second in my living room with 5.2 surround sound. That right there is a dream come true, guys. Like, I am legit excited to just sit in my living room and enjoy a truly 4K gaming experience. We have finally made it. But even then, Microsoft is saying we're going to get 8K support. Whether that means 8K movies or 8K gaming in the future with maybe 30 frames per second, I don't know. I don't have an 8K TV. I don't plan on getting an 8K TV. And honestly, I'm not interested in 8K whatsoever. I mean, I love 4K. It's a beautiful resolution. And I just don't see the need to go above 4K at this moment in time. And let's face it, 4K is still kind of young. I don't think the average consumer has a 4K TV yet. I mean, yeah, prices have come down dramatically. But that's just my point. Like, I don't think everyone's like, well, I really, really need a 4K TV. But for people like myself, nerds, geeks, and whatever you want to call yourself, it's something I truly do care about. So 4K, 60 frames, that's enough for me. But with that said, Microsoft is also promising 120 frames per second gameplay here and there. Now, what that means, I don't know. Maybe Halo Infinite will be 120 frames per second on the Xbox Series X, but Xbox One, it'll be 60 frames per second. I don't know. But the fact that they are talking about 120 frames per second, that's really, really cool. Ray tracing and fast loading times, those are two heavy features that Sony and Microsoft are both focusing on, and obviously I'm not going to argue against that. I mean, ray tracing, I haven't even experienced it. I don't have a graphics card that technically supports ray tracing, but I do plan on getting one in the fall when I build another gaming PC. So yes, between the Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, and a new gaming PC, that's going to cost me probably at least $2,000. I'm going to be spending a lot of money, but it's okay. It's okay. I love my gaming. I love my tech. I've just always been a geek, so I'm quite excited. Okay, moving on. I gotta speed this up. And by the way, get a drink, get a snack, because I like to talk. This next feature is one of the biggest features. It's not necessarily important to me, but I know there's millions of gamers who will jump on the Xbox Series X solely because of this one feature alone, and that's full backwards compatibility with Xbox One games. Yes, if you have an Xbox One game, whether it's a AAA title or some kind of crappy title that got terrible reviews, in theory, it's going to play just fine on the Xbox Series X. That's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. To me, not so much. I'll say it again. I'm not a big backwards compatible kind of person. Like, I don't ever really see the need to connect my Xbox 360 or to connect my PlayStation 3. It's just not important to me. I've always been the kind of tech consumer, gaming consumer who likes to move forward. I don't typically look back with technology. So when I got my PS4, I barely touched my PS3. When I got my Xbox One, I barely touched my Xbox 360. I'm switching things in my head. When I got my Switch, I don't think I ever touched my Wii U ever again. When I got my iPhone 11 Pro Max, I don't think I touched my iPhone 10 after that. I don't even know where my iPhone 10 is. It's sitting somewhere in storage. But that's just my point. I'm a moving forward kind of person. I'm a forward-thinking kind of consumer. But for the people out there who do care about backwards compatibility, the Xbox Series X will play all of your Xbox One games. And that is a significant feature that Microsoft is focusing on, and I think that's really cool. A 1 terabyte SSD from the start. I'm saying from the start because I'm sure we can upgrade it in the future. But 1 terabyte SSD to start from the beginning, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, they could have easily given us like a 500 gigabyte SSD to save on cost, but this is Microsoft we're talking about. Obviously, they can take a hit. So yes, I mean, to give gamers 1 terabyte SSD performance from the beginning, that's a huge deal. And if you've never used an SSD, you are sorely missing out. There are so many advantages with SSDs over hard drives, and obviously the biggest advantage is speed. And the rest of the specs are irrelevant regarding the Xbox Series X. Calm down, people. Calm down. I know, but David, the Xbox Series X has so-and-so CPU. It has so-and-so RAM. No, that stuff doesn't matter. That stuff really means nothing without good games. I mean, you can have the most powerful game console in the world, but if the games suck, you got nothing. I mean, the older I get, the more I realize that specs really don't matter all too much, at least with a gaming console. A gaming PC, yes, of course, because if you're building a custom gaming PC, then you're wanting to get the most out of that PC, right? I mean, that's exactly why I spent $800 alone on my GPU a few years ago. And of course, that's going to be more than the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 cost each. So that kind of puts things into perspective. I mean, PC gamers expect a different kind of experience than console gamers do, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I'll say it again, console specs are not really that relevant, so don't obsess over how much RAM this has or the CPU performance of that. Okay, jumping over to the PlayStation 5, this is almost a copy and paste because the PlayStation 5 seems to be doing what the Xbox Series X is going to be doing, and that's really no surprise. I mean, it's common sense. So PlayStation 5, 4K gaming, 60 frames per second, good stuff. 8K support, as well as 120 frames per second here and there. Good stuff. Ray tracing. Yeah, Faster loading times. You got it. Backwards compatible with top PlayStation 4 games. Now, this is where Sony might be slipping a little bit. If my research is correct, the PlayStation 5 is not backwards compatible with all PlayStation 4 games. This is a huge deal. Huge, huge deal. Again, not for someone like myself, because it doesn't really matter all that much to me. But if you have a lot of PlayStation 4 games that are not top, rated by Sony, rated by players, all that stuff, then you might want to keep your PS4 around, at least alongside the PlayStation 5, if that's important to you. But even then, I mean, if you only care about games like Metal Gear Solid and Uncharted and whatever else ranked high on the list throughout the PlayStation 4 era, then you probably have nothing to worry about. I mean, Sony most likely has your back with the most important games. But if you do have that quirky game that nobody else loves and you really, really want to keep playing it, then, well, that's something to think about. All right, so this next one is another misstep by Sony, in my opinion. 825 gigabyte SSD. Don't forget, the Xbox Series X has a 1 terabyte SSD. And it's important to keep in mind, just because it says 1 terabyte with the Series X, we do have less than that. So we're going to have even less with the PS5's 825 gigabyte SSD. I mean, that difference might not seem like that much, 825 to 1 terabyte, but you got to keep in mind, I mean, that space difference alone could factor in for what, like 2 or 3 video game installs. So, with that said, you might find yourself uninstalling a game as early as March or April of next year to install the newest AAA title. I mean, I've done that many times on my PlayStation 4. I mean, especially with a game like GTA 5, that game, what is it, over 100 gigabytes now? I mean, I don't play it anymore. It's in the past. I really want GTA 6, Rockstar. Come on, guys, come on. I mean, we went through an entire console generation with GTA 5. I think it's time to move on. But that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. Anyway, 825 gigabyte SSD, that's not bad. Again, I mean, they could have easily given us 500 gigabytes. So 825 gigabytes SSD from day one isn't terrible. I just wish they would have gone the Microsoft route in giving us 1 terabyte. And much like the Series X, the rest of the specs are irrelevant. I don't care about the processor. I don't care about the RAM. I mean, if you think back to the PlayStation 3 days, Sony really focused a lot of time on selling the cell. When at the end of the day, the cell, it didn't really mean all that much, right? It didn't really mean all that much because I was a much, much bigger fan of the Xbox 360. Honestly, guys, for the PlayStation 3, I had maybe, 5 or 7 games? I mean, I was a big, big 360 fanboy back then. So I think Microsoft, in my opinion, did a much better job than Sony did that generation. But with that said, I think the PlayStation 4 was arguably better than the Xbox One. So flipping things around this time, maybe Microsoft will be the first to get to the most sold units before Sony. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, we don't have price, we don't have release dates, so it's kind of hard to tell at this point. Okay, so with the specs and the key features and all that stuff out of the way, let's focus on my honest thoughts on how I think Microsoft and Sony are both going to approach the next console war. I hate those words together, console war. So stupid. First of all, Microsoft seems to be mostly focused on a unified experience of the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X. So, in other words, for the foreseeable future, every game released on the Xbox Series X will be on the Xbox One as well, and vice versa. So, yeah, this goes for Halo Infinite, any future Forza games. I mean, it's cool. It's a very consumer-friendly approach. So let's say there's an exclusive title only coming out on the Series X, and Xbox One players are like, well, I could really use that game in my life. Well, Microsoft's got your back, and I think that's really incredible from a consumer's perspective. And apparently with the smart delivery, or whatever it's called, I'm sorry for getting the terminology wrong. I believe this is Microsoft's way of unifying the game save experience as well. So let's say you start the new Gears of War game on Xbox One and you get it for the Series X. You could literally load that save file on the Series X from your Xbox One progress. That's really cool. Like, that's a unified experience. And you have to look at this from the consumer's perspective. Let's say, for instance, I have an Xbox One over at Driftwood, and I have my Series X here. I start a game here, and I could pick it up over at Driftwood because there's an Xbox One there and not a Series X. That right there is a really cool unified experience. And I wish Sony would be more focused on that. But even with that said, again, I'm a forward-thinking kind of person, and this worries me a little bit. I really hope this is only for the next few years. I don't want the entire generation of Series X games to also be available on the Xbox One. Because in my opinion, that's going to tell Microsoft and all the third-party developers, hey, you can develop for both consoles, but make sure you share resources, you know? No. I want games on the Series X to truly take advantage of Series X hardware. I don't want the Xbox One slowing down development. I don't want it hindering what we could really get out of the truly next-gen experience. So hopefully, and maybe Microsoft has talked about this and perhaps I just missed it, because don't forget, it's only June, guys. It's only June. These consoles are, in theory, coming out in November, so we still have quite some time to wait. Maybe Microsoft is planning on completely killing Xbox One support in a few years. And guys, honestly, I hope they do. I hope they do. Maybe I'm anti-consumer, I don't know. But as a forward-thinking consumer, at some point, you gotta say goodbye to the past. It's kind of like Nintendo. I'll probably get some hate for this, but can we please get away from the 3DS? Like, just drop development for it. It's been out for a very, very long time. Focus all of your efforts on the Switch. Let the 3DS die. It's been a very, very successful portable, but in theory, the Switch, Nintendo, the Switch is your new portable, is your new home console. It's a hybrid. Focus on that and only that. I'm sure those comments are going to get some people mad, and rightfully so. You have your right to your opinion, but I have my right to my opinion as well. So that's just how I think. Move forward and keep things in the past. The past is just that for a reason. It's the past. It's time to move on. And now shifting back to the PlayStation 5 side, Sony arguably might be doing a better job with the games. I mean, they're focusing on putting out AAA exclusive experiences, such as the new Spider-Man game. That looked really, really good. We also have a new Oddworld game. I don't know if that's going to be exclusive. I can't see that being exclusive. But the point is, Sony seems to be focusing on a lot of exclusives for the PlayStation 5. And honestly, I think the PlayStation 4 won this last generation in terms of exclusives over the Xbox One. And that's just my opinion. I think Sony did a much better job in putting out those AAA exclusives than Microsoft did. But even with that said, Microsoft has their franchises that are extremely popular, like Gears of War, Halo, Forza, but at the same time, those titles are available on PC. So if you have a PC, I don't see much reason to go with the Series X, except if you're like me and you just like to own all the consoles, because I like to play anything and play everything. That's just who I am. I'm a very open-minded consumer. I don't shelter myself into these egotistical PC master race, Xbox master race, PlayStation master race mindsets. I just can't get behind that. It's childish and it's stupid. So I think that pretty much clears up how I feel about PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. They're both going to be doing some very cool things. Again, Xbox is going for a very unified experience, which is consumer friendly, but it could quite possibly hinder development in terms of taking advantage of next-gen hardware with the Series X. But at the same time, Sony seems to be shutting out a lot of its PlayStation 4 users and purely focusing on PlayStation 5, which is a good and a bad thing. I mean, they're both doing good things and they're both doing bad things. But the good news is Microsoft has a very different vision than Sony, and Nintendo is doing their own thing with the Switch. So if you want my honest opinion, I think the next generation of consoles is going to be very, very exciting. Each brand has something awesome to offer. And I don't see any reason to play favorites. I mean, if you have the option of going with all three consoles, then go with all three consoles. I cannot express it enough. Stop limiting yourself. all right? Stop limiting yourself. Because believe me, it works out for you, the consumer, in the end. So guys, those are my thoughts on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. We have a very, very exciting few months ahead of us. Again, we don't know the price. We don't know the release dates. Part of me is really hoping Sony announces their price first, and then Microsoft comes out of nowhere and says, oh, hey, ours is cheaper. Oh, and by the way, I'm quite impressed with the idea of Sony going with a disc-less console. In other words, digital only. Personally speaking, I'm not going to go that route because there might be games in the future that I want to get really cheap off of Amazon or eBay. And guys, if you want cheap games in the future, make sure you go with the actual PlayStation 5 console with the optical drive. I mean, I think that's a smart thing to do. Because, well, would you rather pay $20 for an older game or $40 for an older game on the PlayStation Store? Amazon or the official PlayStation Store? In my experience, Amazon is often a lot cheaper. And plus, I like having that physical game collection. And I say that as a heavy PC gamer nowadays. I mean, obviously, PC's all digital. I don't really have the choice there. And if I did have the choice, I would go with digital because I often switch games faster on PC than I do console. But hey, either way you look at it, we have lots of choices coming up. This is going to be a very consumer-friendly holiday season that we're jumping into as gamers. And I'm excited. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts right below. Which one will you be buying and why? And I'll see you next time. Peace.